2027年代志大条咯 ，cause America and China are gonna face off in the ultimate showdown。但是美国好像还没准备好咯。Because China is completely overloading America with spies. And it seems America is having a lot of trouble keeping them out. All because of one money-sucking American establishment, universities. And recently, there was one Ivy League school that has not only been a breeding ground for extreme leftist terrorism, but has also simultaneously been rolling out the welcome mat for the CCP.
Harvard University.
And this Guayas University is causing some serious national security issues, yo. And it could cost America everything. All because of one tiny constitutional bug.
Hold on to your butts.
And your Baomihua as we take a look at one of the most dangerous constitutional bugs that could cause America to go 6 feet under. 真的是代志大条咯。So, a few days ago, Trump banned Harvard's ability to admit international students. And of course, a lot of folks, townies included, started going in on the orange man again. So let's see if today's video can't give you a different perspective.
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Saturday's protest inside Harvard Yard attracted over 250 supporters of Palestine, and this group's demand to stop Israel's displacement of Palestinians in Gaza.
And after Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7th, many American universities, unsurprisingly, sided with Palestine, and even Hamas themselves. Viewing Hamas's actions as a form of Palestinian liberation, pro-Palestine marches appeared everywhere on university campuses.
And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment, yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual, at an individual.
It's targeted at Jewish students, Jewish individuals. Do you understand your testimony is dehumanizing them? Do you understand that dehumanization is part of anti-Semitism? I will ask you one more time. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment, yes or no?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric.
And is it anti-Semitic rhetoric?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric, when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board.
This is Harvard's former president, Claudine Gay.
Why are you gay?
And her attitude at the congressional hearing was uncooperative as fuck. And she was accused by many Americans of anti-Semitism and fostering an environment for terrorism. And in 2024, due to suspected plagiarism in her papers and her attitude at the hearing, she ultimately resigned.
It's less that I chose to take on the fight than that the fight came to me.
Harvard is just one of the many elite universities under attack by the Trump administration.
I think Harvard's a disgrace. I think what they did was a disgrace.
Trump has threatened to revoke billions of dollars in federal funding and is pushing for government oversight on campuses. But Harvard is fighting back, and President Alan Garber has become the face of this resistance.
Now, after Claudine, the succeeding president continued in his predecessor's attitude, refusing to cooperate with the U.S. government's investigation into international students' so-called anti-Semitic protests. And as a result, Trump revoked Harvard's privilege to admit international students.
A federal judge has blocked the Trump administration from taking action against Harvard. Yesterday, Trump barred the university from enrolling international students since the school refused to adhere to certain demands from the administration. In turn, Harvard sued the Trump administration. And this morning, the university president writing a letter condemning their actions, saying in part, quote, "It imperils the future of thousands of students and scholars across Harvard and serves as a warning to countless others who have come to America to pursue their education and fulfill their dreams."
Now, of course, within less than a day, a federal judge suspended Trump's ban. But actually, Trump doesn't even need a ban to prevent Harvard from admitting international students. As long as the State Department doesn't agree to grant a student a visa,
You shall not pass!
We begin with breaking news at 11. A deadly shooting in Washington, D.C. happening right outside the Capitol Jewish Museum, where a young diplomat's reception organized by the American Jewish Committee was being held. A man and woman, both staffers at the Israeli embassy, were killed. A man detained and handcuffed by event security was heard chanting, "Free, free Palestine."
Now, I believe Trump announced a ban that would definitely be overturned by the First Amendment because of the tragedy that happened a few days ago. He just wanted everyone to see that the slogan this killer shouted can also be heard on Harvard's campus. What was originally a slogan for protest has now become a slogan for terrorism. The Israel-Palestine issue has existed for a long minute, and you might wonder, like me, why just a few years ago we barely saw any pro-Palestinian protests, especially since America and Israel have been very tight, almost too tight. Tight, yeah! And why have so many universities suddenly started supporting Palestine in the recent years? Well, by the end of the next chapter, you just might have the answer to your question. So, 准备more点爆米花 because things are getting 大鸡大屌 as fuck.
This is Xi Mingzi, a Harvard University student between 2010 and 2014. What's so special about her? She is the only daughter of Chinese President Xi Jinping. During her time at Harvard, she lived under a pseudonym. How did she get into Harvard University? The university made exceptions for her. Xi Jinping promised millions of dollars in endowments and walked the talk when he came to power.
Could you imagine two hostile countries on the brink of war, and then one of these countries' leaders decides to send its only princess to the enemy country to study there?
That's crazy, man.
Well, this is exactly what happened, as China's princess enrolled at the top Ivy League school of Harvard.
A 2021 study from Jay Green and James Paul of the Heritage Foundation examined the social media feeds of 741 DEI personnel at 65 universities. Those DEI staff interacted with almost 3 times as many posts about Israel as about China. Of those interactions about Israel, 96% were critical, while 62% of the interactions about China were favorable. What is your reaction to the fact that the DEI staff on your campuses appear more favorably disposed to one of the most oppressive regimes in the world than they are to Israel? Dr. Gay.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Our DEI office and all the professionals in that office are committed to being a resource for the entire campus community. All of our students, all of our faculty, all of our staff. Their priority is ensuring that everyone feels a sense of belonging, and they do that work motivated by a commitment to safety, security, to well-being, and not within an ideological framework.
Fun fact, Harvard staff seem to love China a lot. And this ain't some random bullshit, yo. There's a lot of research to back it up. And how did Harvard's former president respond? With a bunch of word salad completely avoiding the answer to the question.
Founding Dean, Professor Anderson.
CFO, you come to paint the illusion of a prosperous China, but your hands are painted with blood. You've robbed the Hong Kongers of their most fundamental freedoms and devastated their democracy. Now, in my country, Taiwan, you've sought to do the same.
Thank you, everyone, for
China, people die! 80% of Tibetan children are forced into colonial boarding schools that are aimed to destroy modern Tibetan people's existence. Shame on Chiapo! Shame on Chiapo!
Now, this protest happened back in 2024, involving Taiwanese and Tibetan students when Chinese officials came to speak at Harvard. The one who dragged the first female student out was another Chinese student. The current Harvard president, Alan Garber, yes, the same president who refused Trump's request to hand over anti-Semitic student data, decided to punish these two students and even threatened them with expulsion. And then when it came to that Chinese student, Harvard apologized.
What kind of shit is that?
So Harvard allows a group of students to shout from the river to the sea, which undoubtedly implicates anti-Semitic rhetoric on campus, then protects these two students in Congress. But then on the flip side, they won't allow students to protest an authoritarian regime with a laundry list of human rights abuses, particularly against Muslims, just like Palestinians, and then threaten to punish them?
Just a small announcement.
you're pretty close to going to hell.
Allegedly caught red-handed, Charles Liebner is the former chair of Harvard's Chemistry and Chemical Biology Department. He was indicted on charges of making false statements to federal authorities regarding his participation in China's Thousand Talents program.
Charles Lieber, a Harvard chemist who was on track to win the Nobel Prize, received $15 million in U.S. taxpayer money for nanotechnology research. Then, while employed at Harvard, he joined China's Thousand Talents program, receiving $50 grand a month from the Chinese government to help steal American information and hand it over to the Wuhan Institute of Technology. Now, he was ultimately convicted and found guilty. And as of last month, Charles moved to China and works as a professor at a Chinese university in Shenzhen.
Shit, partner.
Now, so far, Charles is the only department chair who was caught spying for the CCP. And he only got caught because he cheated on his taxes. And remember the earlier segment about the 741 Harvard staff where 62% were in favor of China? Do you really think this is the only one? Now, you already know the CCP's influence within Harvard University, so let's see what stance the CCP takes on the Palestine-Israel issue.
以色列人得到了生存的保障，巴勒斯坦人的生存谁来关心？以色列的民族已经不在世界上颠沛流离，巴勒斯坦民族何时才能重返家园？这个世界存在各种不公，而对巴勒斯坦的不公已经延宕了大半个世纪，承接了几代人的痛苦，不能再继续下去了。
The CCP has successfully used university campuses, places where First Amendment rights are greatly exercised and protected, to influence professors through money, then influence students through professors, turning American campuses into engines opposing U.S. government policies. And this anti-American government engine is protected by the U.S. Constitution. Now, when America goes to war with China in 2027 over Taiwan, guess which schools are going to protest with great anger and fury?
Oh, Taiwan isn't a tiny island. Why would America fight for a small island over 12,000 kilometers away?
Strength and security. In fact, I just launched a bill and sponsored a bill, one of my first, which was sadly to not issue visas to Chinese nationals that want to come here on student visas, because over the past few years, we have had to arrest so many Chinese nationals here on visas that were sneaking onto our military bases, taking pictures. It has just been, it's happened in the state of Florida. And it should be no surprise, if anybody was following it, that China passed laws just before the Biden administration. The first one was all Chinese nationals had to cooperate with matters of national security. And if you were a Chinese national, you had to participate with intelligence gathering or face consequences. So why we are issuing visas to Chinese nationals that are coming over here makes no sense. We're inviting agents of the CCP into our country when they are obligated by law to gather intelligence.
Now, in addition to influencing American universities, what's even more dangerous are Chinese international students. There are nearly 300,000 Chinese international students in America, and if just 1% of them are spies, then all of America could face at least the threat of 3,000 student spies. That's minimum 60 spies per state.
And in 2020, a UCLA student was arrested for attempting to conceal his ties to the Chinese government. The 29-year-old mathematics student was suspected of transferring sensitive software to the Chinese military. These are only two examples of undercover espionage, prompting the National Institute of Health to warn universities of the potential threat in 2018, writing, NIH is aware that some foreign entities have mounted systematic programs to influence NIH researchers and peer reviewers. This kind of inappropriate influence is not limited to biomedical research. It has been a significant issue for defense and energy research for some time.
Not only that, but China's use of students for high-tech espionage activities in academia started a long 15 years ago. And because of the protection of First Amendment rights in academia, just like Trump's Harvard ban this time, America has absolutely no way to stop it.
What country is FBI Director Christopher Wray worried most about? Last week, he told Lester,
I think China, from a counterintelligence perspective, in many ways represents the broadest, most challenging, most significant threat we face as a country.
Academic espionage is of particular concern. That some Chinese graduate students at the direction of the Chinese government are stealing research, much of which is funded by the U.S. military. This FBI document highlights a case at Duke University in the lab of Dr. David Smith.
In a microwave oven,
Dr. Smith, famous for inventing an invisibility cloak made of a material invisible to microwaves, something that captured the attention of even late-night comedians.
Working invisibility cloak.
And a young scientist in China, Rupan Liu. Liu came to study in Dr. Smith's lab, some believe on a mission from the Chinese government.
We know that the Chinese have a shopping list of intelligence and technology that they target every year. We know that the research that he took from Duke University was on that collection list, and we know that certain government officials and operatives met with him while he was in the United States.
Liu, who was being paid by the Chinese government while a student here, brought his colleagues from China to Dr. Smith's lab.
Now, Republicans are trying really hard to push legislation to completely ban Chinese students, but as you can tell, a bill like this is so controversial that it hasn't even entered congressional discussion. And this brings us to our ultimate question. Are First Amendment rights more important than national security?
Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe fuck yourself.
But here's a thought. When it comes to the First Amendment, at least on college campuses anyway, maybe it should be limited to benefiting those with individual achievements. Because let's be real, when it comes to academic achievements, it doesn't necessarily benefit everyone in the country. But when it comes to issues of national security threats, it definitely will harm everyone in the country. At least I think so. But I could be wrong. Let me know what you think down below. Remember to keep it civil, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you on the flip side. Peace!